In July of 2012, Mark Zuckerberg financed his $5.95 million Palo Alto home. That's 3 miles away from Facebook headquarters with 30 years mortgage. At that time, he was 28 years old and he was the 40th wealthiest person that an estimate 15.6 billion. The question is, why would you get into the debt when you have billions of the dollars and can easily afford it? If he wanted, he could easily buy the dozen 6 million homes in cash without beating an eye. So why get a mortgage? The answer is long and complicated, but in the short, it's free money. Sounds ridiculous. Who would give you free money when you're already a billionaire? Let me explain. It all has to do with the interest rates. The inflation rates in the US is 2.5% to 3%. So any money you borrow that is below the inflation's rate is considering free money. Zuckerberg's mortgage rate is just a little over 1.500%. But it is adjusted, meaning that based on the circumstances, the rate could possibly go up for one reason or another. If you do the math, the bank is the loser since the mortgage rate is below the inflation's. You don't have to be the genius to do the math. For the sake of examples, let's say you borrow $1 million at the rate of the 1%. The average rate of return to the savings account is 2.4%, meaning that even if you deposit that $1 million in another bank, you end up making $24,000 a year, while you only have to make a monthly payment of the 10,500 dollars to the bank. That's lent you that money. Imagine if you don't have with $100 million, or how about $1 billion? When you can borrow for free, there's no point in trying up your own money when you can use that money for free. Profitable things. Of course, when we are talking about small amounts of the money, this might not make sense because the difference isn't that big. However, when it comes to the large sums, playing around with 1, 2, or 0.5% could potentially mean dozens of the thousands of the dollars, if not hundreds. Let's say you're a businessman and you can easily afford $1 million house. Why buy a house when you can finance it for 1 or 2% while you invest the rest of that money into your business that could potentially get you 10 or 20, if not 30% return? Even if you are lazy to find more profitable ways to use money, just throwing it all into the index funds can be much more profitable, especially when we are talking about 20 or 30 years. Historically, an index fund has shown to have an average return of the 8%. If you take the mortgage and itself your money and in the index funds, the percentage difference will end up in your pockets. It all comes down to opportunity costs economically. It would make sense for Zuckerberg to buy the house in the cash when he has been offered 1% mortgage rate, but he is not the only who is so smart to do that. Take Elon Musk, for example. Most of his wealth is tied to Tesla and SpaceX. To buy a house for $20 million, he probably might need to sell a considerable chunk of his wealth, pay taxes, and incur other expenses. However, he can take free money and keep his monthly payment under his budget. He took out a $61 million mortgage for 5 properties in California with the monthly payment of the $180,000. That's not unique to the billionaires. It's also practical by the moderately rich people like the Jay-Z and Beyonce. They took a mortgage to buy their $88 million house. They put 40% down payments and financed the other $52.8 million. That leaves the couple of with the $150,000 monthly payment. In comparison, the national median home value is $200. Instead of the tidying $53 million in the house, he definitely knows where to invest it to maximize his profit. And at the end of the day, he has made a lot of the great investments. And he is on his way to becoming a billionaire. The richer you get, the better ways to find to make more money. But let's be honest, not everyone gets such a low mortgage rate. Nationwide, it's around 3%, but even at that rate, it still doesn't make sense to purchase the house if you can finance it. But let's get into this clear first. Why do the super rich get lower rated than the rest of the country? First of all, when you're a billionaire, the bank can see calmly because no one is worried that you might default on your loan. And in the case of the something happens, you can easily sell part of your businesses to pay back your mortgage. That takes out the risk of the equations. Compare that on an average employee who could get sick and not be able to work or just lose his job. Secondly, paying your mortgage on the time every month helps you build and maintain a healthy credit score. So when you are in the trouble next time with the strong credit score, it will be much easier to borrow money from the banks. You are basically building trust between you and the financial institutions. But it could also be the other way around. Banks do offer such a low mortgage rate to establish the strong relationships with the rich people, so that when their companies would need the loan from the bank, they would come to them and not their competitors. It's a win-win situations, but these low mortgage rates are adjustable, which means, as I said earlier, they could go up, but no one is worried because if it stops making sense economically to these ultra rich people, they easily can pay back their mortgage. But most people associated debt with something negative because we usually borrow money that we can't afford for entertainment and end up paying a lot more back. In fact, right after the getting out of the college, you realize that the burden your student debt is already. And once you calculated how many years you have to pay back the debt, you immediately created the perceptions that debt is bad, especially when you can even default on it. Paying around with the debt is not easy. You are eventually taking a huge risk, and the small miscalculations can lead to the disastrous consequences. In fact, we have got into so much debt that most people now can't even afford unexpected $500 bills because we have to make all of these monthly payments. However, that's what distinguishes bad debts from the good ones. Debt can ruin your life, make you homeless, and cripple your family if you are reckless. But it can also make unbelievable rich if you know how to use it because it is leverage. Leverage is the superpower that can make you rich instantly. Let's say, for the sake of example, you buy this phone for the $1,000, go to the market and sell it for the $11,000. Congrats, you just made a profit of the $1,000. However, that's not much. But what if you use leverage? You go to the bank first, borrow $990,000 with your additional $10,000. That's going to be the $1,000,000. You head to your supplier and buy 100 phones. Now for the $1,000,000, turn around and sell it to the market for the $1,100,000. But you still own the bank, so you go to the bank again and return them $990,000 that you borrowed and another $10,000 in the invest. Now you are left with the $100,000. After you deduct your own $10,000, you are left with $90,000 of the pure profit. That's how you make money when you don't have money. The bank made their share of the profits and you made yours. Of course, when you take this formula to the extreme and it's not regulated by the government and practiced by everyone, in the Wall Street, it turns into the financial crisis as it happened in 2008. Remember when the home prices crashed and they took down the entire economy with them? Well, it's because the investments banks used leverage to maximize their profit to the point where the strategy backfired because they began giving mortgage to the people who didn't necessarily had the best credit score and weren't financially prepared to make the monthly payments, and then they defaulted on their mortgage. It was a nightmare for the investors because for the last 40 years home prices were rising and suddenly they were going down. Well, we are not going to get into the details of the 2008 financial crisis. That's a story for another video, but in anyways, it's still the major tool of how rich people make money. Of course, it's risky and you can end up losing everything, but if you know what you are doing, you can make the fortune overnight. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and most importantly found it helpful. And if you did, make sure you give it thumbs ups, and if you want to see more of this video, considering subscribing and clicking on the bells beside it so that the next video will appear right on your homepage and you won't miss the next video. Thanks for watching and until next time.